morning. My name is Stacy Bruzzese. I'm the Executive Director with the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce, and we are here at Brookstone Event Center in Derry this morning in conjunction with the Greater Salem Chamber of Commerce, providing an update to our membership regarding transportation issues here in New Hampshire. Speakers this morning include Senator Jim Rausch, who will be speaking about the Transportation Committee in the state, what the State House has going through for bills and legislation. We'll also have Mark Brewer, Airport Director from Manchester Boston Regional Airport, giving us an update on airport expansion and projects that they have going on. And third, we have Commissioner Christopher Clement from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, who will speak about the I-93 expansion and funding for that project, as well as other projects throughout New Hampshire who will be competing for same dollars, and what's going on really with a focused look between Exit 5 and the Salem line. So thank you for coming to all of those, and thank you to Enterprise Bank, our sponsor, and we're looking forward to bringing more great programs to our membership and the community throughout 2013. So.
And we're going to get started. Everybody can settle in. All right, my name is Bernie Ross, and I am the chairman of the Government Connections Committee for the Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce. And obviously, this is a joint collaboration between the Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Salem Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And today our focus is to educate everybody on the ongoings of the infrastructure of the local region. And what a great turnout. We're so excited to see all the cars out in the parking lot and all the people here. I was a little surprised when I pulled in and saw the full lot, and I said, geez, I'm running a little late. I better get settled in here pretty quickly. So again, thank you everybody for attending this. I would like to introduce at this time our primary sponsor Enterprise Bank, and John Phelan, and he'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Bernie. I'll be very brief here. So I'd like to thank both chambers for allowing us to be part of this series of events and for highlighting these issues, which are so important to us all. If you're not familiar with Enterprise Bank, we're a locally owned commercial bank. We've been slowly growing our southern New Hampshire presence in recent years. Started with an office in Salem in 2005, and have added one in Derry, Hallam, Hudson, and most recently added one, announced one for Main Street in Nashua. So, you know, growing in a tough economy, I think, has been tied to our accessibility and local decision making. So if you have any needs, please consider us. You can find out more information at enterprisebanking.com. And with that, I'll hand it back to Bernie to get started. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, so to get started, you know, we've packed session today of speakers, and hopefully everybody walks out of here highly educated and understanding of the issues that affect our local economy here and the infrastructure in southern New Hampshire. I'd like to take a special moment to thank the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce and Stacy Bruzzese and Donna Morris from the Greater Salem Chamber. They did a fantastic job putting this together. You know, what a great amount of work they put into all this, and you can see the turnout, and I'd like to really give them thanks for all of this. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Senator Jim Rausch, who is the Transportation Committee Chairman, and he will speak to us for about 15 minutes. If you follow on the format, we have some Q&A at 9:15, but Jim's going to do some Q&A immediately following his talk because he has to leave a little bit early, so feel free to entertain some questions. I guess normally we do index cards, but I think we're probably just going to be doing a show of hands, and you'll have to call on the people.
I'm okay with that.
So here you go, Jim.
Okay. Thank you, and good morning. I'm extremely pleased to be here. I think, as chairman of transportation, one of the first things I want to do is thank our commissioner, who has been doing a great job in helping improve our infrastructure so that it is beneficial to our business community. He's reorganizing the department, streamlining. He's doing a great job. I'd also really be remiss if I didn't thank someone who, over a course of many, many years, has helped me resolve a lot of problems, from signage to roads to local to state, and that's the Assistant Commissioner, Jeff Brewer. He has always been great to work with. So Jeff, thank you, helping me help you. I'm going to first start out a little bit about financing. Some years ago, then as a state representative, myself and then state representatives, now Senator Morse, we sponsored legislation to qualify the state and authorize $195 million in Garvey bonds. It is that money that you see being put to work right now in doing I-93, the last of which was $115 million that was issued. And what's really significant about that is that it will complete I-93 to exit 3 from the state line. Excuse me, but it was also done at an interest rate of 1.27%. We have never seen such a advantageous environment to bond money. Because of that, the last budget cycle, I sponsored an amendment to the 10-year highway plan to authorize an additional $250 million in bonding authority. And I believe the way the Federal Reserve is operating, we will continue to have a very beneficial interest rate environment. It is that $250 million that will complete I-93 from exit 3 to Manchester, including exit 4A. Exit 4A right now is going to be engineered as part of the contract that was let out by the governor and council recently. It is almost done with the final environmental impact. There is some mitigation yet on wetlands, but that is very, very close. The law of physics basically states for every action there is a reaction, and I can guarantee you that is true in Concord. So the $250 million of bonding authorization sits there as an action, but the reaction, of course, is how do we pay for it. So I'm just going to speak for me personally, and I support Senate Bill 152, which is the gaming bill. 45% of the revenue generated is scheduled to go to the highways. That is more than sufficient to cover the bond. In addition, there will be additional revenue that we will place in the betterment account and the state aid bridge account. And those accounts go directly to the local community. That is for the local communities to build and improve their roads and their local bridges. So I don't believe you can take an action without making sure that you can fund that, and that is my choice. Obviously there are some other avenues out there, and how the bouncing ball ends up, we probably won't know till June. When I say we're going to complete the highway to exit 3 and then on to Manchester, there is still one caveat, and that's the sodium chloride issue. Right now, we can build the dirt to 4 lanes, but we can only blacktop 3 until the chloride issue is resolved. Last year, last biennium, Senator Morse and I worked on a piece of legislation that would hopefully solve the chloride issue. It didn't go anywhere, mostly because of the North Country. This year, some of the state representatives here, John O'Connor from Derry and others, re-sponsored that legislation. I believe it has been tabled at the time. Retained. What that does for us is it authorizes the snow operators and the local communities, if they use best management practices on how they apply salt, they'll be indemnified. We do have to control how much salt is put down in our parking lots in order to help resolve some of the water issues. So That is one caveat yet that has not been resolved to really finally implementing the entire stretch of I-93 to 4 lanes. Some of the other things that in our committee that we work very closely with the department, I'll go into one of them this year, have worked on redoing some of our RSAs to allow for all electronic tolling. And this is kind of an interesting phenomena that we now have changed the law, at least in the Senate. I'm assuming it'll be okay going through the House. What this is going to allow is basically anyone going through any of the toll booths without anything other than your license plate. The test project is going to be the exit ramp at Hookson. But what it basically does is takes a photo of the license plate, and if you don't stop and you don't have a transponder, you're going to be sent a bill. Exactly how that works, I think the department will be testing it, and we'll see how that goes forward. But it is an innovative way to try and reduce some cost and still get the monies collected. What's interesting, I probably shouldn't say this, but right now, we don't have a mechanism if you go through the cash lane and don't pay. We do not have cameras on those lanes, so I hesitate to say it, so please nobody in this room decide to go through. But the truth of the matter is that we do have to update our collection system and our ability to make sure that people aren't cheating, and this is one of the ways to do that. The other thing that, at least in my committee, that we worked on this year, I do an awful lot of legislation just in response to what the departments want. So I work closely with DOT and also with the Department of Safety. And last year and this year, one of the things that we worked on were the interlock safety devices. And of course, hopefully, again, no one in here ever has to discuss that, but that's for your DUIs. We have increased, or we have advanced with the technology, and the technology now has an enhanced interlock safety device. They are GPS driven and they are camera driven. The reason I supported that is that we do certainly have individuals who make mistakes, they lose their license, but then they have no ability to drive to work. One of the hopes here is with the GPS, Department of Safety knows exactly where they go, and with the camera they know exactly who's behind the wheel of the car. So there is no cheating. You can't have somebody blow into the device and then you get in it and drive it. This enhanced technology basically ensures that it is the person who is authorized to drive, and they know exactly where they're driving. So they could actually get the permission to drive to and from work, even though they have lost their license. There could be that exception. So I think for some of our citizens who have made a bad choice, it might be helpful for them so they don't at least lose their gainful employment. A multitude of issues have come up. Oh, geez, I must be talking fast. I got time here. I'm also on Ways and Means and Capital Budget. The capital budget actually, a senator or a state representative just gave me what the House has passed. They do a great job. But for those individuals here from Salem, I've been a very strong supporter of our Career and Technical Education Center. And Salem is up for funding on that. It is in the 10-year highway plan. It is in the capital budget. I will work very, very hard on the Senate side to ensure that that funding remains in the budget. I think if you're not familiar with career and technical education, it really is a beneficial component of our educational process to ensure that those individuals who choose not to go on to college still have an opportunity to have a career in gainful employment. And our centers do a really, really good job In our region, we're fortunate, we actually have two. We have Salem and we have Pinkerton, and they share back and forth with different programs. So I will be very, very happy to support that committee. As far as other issues right now, I guess I just go back to what I view as the most important for me in transportation, and that is our infrastructure. We have a number of failing bridges. The department's doing a really, really good job at that. But I-93 still is the first and foremost to get completed. I'm very, very hopeful that this year we will have a resolution to the monetary component of it. I think probably everyone is aware that there are different views on how to pay for it, so we'll kind of await what ultimately that decision, it's right now in the Senate Bill 152 is in the House, and we'll shortly be getting the gas bill that they passed. So we will look at those and see where they go. I think the commissioner is, I spoke to him yesterday, so he's got a whole agenda of speaking to I-93 and a lot of the road projects. So I don't want to go any further into that, but I would be happy at this point to take questions if someone has any questions. Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what the sodium chloride problem is? I mean, I assume it has something to do with road salt, but...
It isn't just road salt, it is salt. And that's why I was speaking to the legislation. The runoff from parking lots is also very, very significant, and actually the testing indicates now that the private use in the commercial areas is actually contributing more to the salt issue than the highway is. We have been trying to mitigate the salt issue for some time. One of the things now, if you see those white stripes before a snowstorm, that's a brine. The state makes their own brine product, and we have received federal funding for those trucks to lay the brine down. That's one of the ways to mitigate the quantity of salt that is used during a storm, is to pre-treat the highways. So this process has started some time ago. One of the big areas that is a problem is Cobbett's Pond. And until that is resolved, we thought actually it was resolved back in December, but it ended up that the solution became more of a problem than a solution, so that got shut down. And I don't know if the commissioner is going to talk about that at all, but there are some other proposals now that they are working on to try and resolve that. But percentage-wise now, actually we have more of a salt issue from the private applicators than we do from the state applicators. And that's why the proposed legislation was trying to mitigate that by training the salt applicators in best management practices so that they don't over-apply it, and also indemnifying the business community that if in fact they're following best management practices, they can't get sued. So hopefully that'll pass. Once in a while I get disappointed. I hate to say this, but I spoke to someone the other day who voted against the bill, and after asking him questions, it was pretty obvious that representative never even read it. So I always get disappointed when somebody votes for or against something not knowing what it's in. But I won't make any more comment, I guess, on that. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question on your gaming bill, 452. You had mentioned that 45% of the revenue may go to transportation infrastructure. So my question on the 45%, is any of that going to be going to other modes of transportation other than roads and bridges? We have a beautiful new Boston Express that's a surface transportation source that's very successful. I'm guessing that perhaps we could have something similar that would feed the airport, and if we ever get real surface transportation, would benefit by some of these revenues to feed systems such as rail and such as transportation to the airport.
Right now, the 45% is for bonds Betterment, and State Aid Bridge. Now, we are making connections utilizing bus service to the airport. We're using toll credits to help fund that. And I don't know if people here are familiar with the toll credit. I'll just briefly explain that. For every dollar that is spent on the turnpike system, the federal government gives us a credit for that money. And we can use those credits over on the highway side. So there is now going to be a bus connection from Portsmouth over to Manchester, and they are working now also on bus service from Manchester to the airport. That has not come to fruition yet, but I have been approached what I support using toll credits for that. That comes through capital budget overview, which I'm on that committee. In the Senate, I'm on 13 different committees, so we're on a whole gamut. But I do support the use of toll credits for expanding that bus service.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. As usual, always great to hear from you and enlightening on the legislative components of what happens in our region. Now we'd like to turn our attention to the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, which I think everybody in this room has flown out of Manchester and can attest that it's a great airport. It's convenient getting in and out, and it's a lifeblood for economic commerce and infrastructure in our region. And I think our economy in southern New Hampshire goes as the airport goes. And so at this point, I'd like to introduce Mark Brewer, the director of the Manchester-Boston Airport.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I want to thank Stacy and the two chambers for inviting me to be here today, especially participating with such a distinguished panel. I also want to echo the Senator's comments about that Commissioner Clement has been a tremendous partner with us. He and his team working very, very hard on the new airport access road that's open. It's really made a big difference on accessibility to the airport. In fact, if you take the top 10 destinations in New Hampshire and the top 10 destinations in Massachusetts where our customers are either coming from or going to, 84% of those customers are actually using the airport access road. And so it's a huge improvement for us. It cuts down dramatically on the amount of time to get in and out of the airport. I also want to point out over here to my left, your right, is Tom Malafront. Tom is the Assistant Airport Director for Air Service Development, Public Relations, and Marketing. And Tom is a key component to our staff, and he's also the advance the slide person this morning. So, this is what everybody thinks of as the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, the commercial service terminal building, all the jets at the gates, the big parking garage, but the airport is so much more, and as it was mentioned in my introduction, is an economic engine, not only for the state of New Hampshire, but actually for the region. So Tom, if you could hit next slide. These are things that clearly I think everybody in this room will agree with are components not only of the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, but effectively any commercial service airport around the country. An economic hub creates jobs, facilitates commerce, and provides access to the global marketplace. So what I want to do next is drill down, next slide, Tom, is to take a look at a little bit in more depth all of those items as they relate to our airport. Start out with a little bit of background and then move forward through some of the challenges we've had, some of the successes that we've had, and where we see things going on in the future. Next slide. So economic impact, $1.24 billion worth of economic impact each and every year. This is the most recent economic impact study that was done. And a couple things that I really wanted to highlight to you is the number of jobs created by the airport. 1,900 jobs on the airport itself, another 1,920 off the airport that would not be there if it wasn't for the airport. Some of the rental car facilities are off the airport. Certainly you all know a number of hotels that actually use Manchester Airport, XYZ Hotel, in their very name. They would not be there if it wasn't for the airport. Of the 1,900 jobs on the airport, the City of Manchester Department of Aviation, who I work for and Tom works for, there's only about 75 of us. So a lot of the employees on the airport are from the rental car companies, the airlines, of course the FAA, the TSA, Wiggins Airways that runs our general aviation facility does a terrific job over there as well. About $153 million worth of payroll each and every year going out. The really important number here as an economic engine is the $753 million worth of what we call new revenue. That's revenue from the passengers who do not live in this area. I think a lot of people think of an airport as a mechanism for local residents to get on an airplane, go somewhere, and then come back. But we are also an economic engine bringing people in from afar, bringing them here, and then they go back home. And those are the folks that really make the huge economic impact serving this region. Because they're the ones that rent the cars, they're the ones that stay in the hotels, eat out every night, go to entertainment venues as well. 44% of our passengers are from outside of the four-state region. So let me just cover that a little bit. 26% of our passengers actually come from New Hampshire, so really only 1 out of 4 actually live in the state of New Hampshire. 22% from Massachusetts, 6% from Maine, 2% from Vermont. And so that 44% live outside. They could live in California, they could live in Texas, they could live in Alaska or around the world. That 44% represents that $753 million, which is actually, if you're doing the math in your head, that's 61%. So 61% of the revenue or the economic impact come from people that don't even live here. And that's why, to help grow the economy, help grow the economic impact of the airport, what the airlines have asked us to do, and I think what we all want to do, is to make New Hampshire a destination. Encourage more and more of folks from afar. Because I will tell you, frankly, in 2006, when they added Boston to the name, to Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, is because there was a study that was done that showed people west of the Mississippi did not know where Manchester was. They thought it was a city outside of London somewhere. And so now, what they asked us to do is get a well-known geographic locator into our name, and that's what we've done. And that 44% used to be in the 20s. As soon as that Boston was added to it, it made a huge impact in the number of passengers who actually came in. Next slide, please. So all of our facilities, we have what we all saw the picture of 308,000 square foot terminal building, 14 gates, about 50 flights a day, going to 16 non-stop destinations. But from those 16 destinations, you can get into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other locations, not only within the U.S., but around the world. About 2.5 million passengers last year, and as you've read in the paper, that is down from the year before. Although I will tell you on the bright spot, February numbers were actually up. February of 2013 was up over 2012. It's been a long time since we've seen that, a couple of years, and so we're pretty excited that hopefully we have reached our plateau and are going to start the rebound. Parking garage and parking over 11,000 spaces. So the point of this is we have a lot of infrastructure that's there. A lot of the facilities are needed to help grow the airport, help grow the economy. None the least of which is that 9,250 foot runway. It's an all-weather, what they call Cat-3 approach, so when the seagulls are walking, we can still land airplanes at the airport. 9,250 feet is not just a nice round number. That's the design length needed for our design aircraft, the Boeing 767, be fully loaded full of people, fuel, cargo, and bags to go nonstop from the East Coast to the West Coast. Some of our most popular destinations are West Coast, so when the economy turns around, fuel prices hopefully stabilize, and airline engines become more and more efficient, we hope that we'll be able to, at some point in time, be able to attract more and more nonstop service to the West Coast. Tom? So here's who we have serving our airport now. 4 airlines. A couple of years ago, there used to be 2 more up there. You all know that Delta and Northwest merged, and they're now known as Delta. United and Continental merged. U.S. Airways is in the media now talking about a merger with American Airlines. Every one that I talk to perceives that that will happen, and it will all shake out, and the name U.S. Airways will go away, and it will become known as American. And then the 800-pound gorilla at Manchester Washington Regional Airport is Southwest Airlines. And that's a great thing in this economy. They are one of the most, for 40 years, profitable airline, and that is unheard of in the industry. So that's the good news and the bad news. So the good news is we have a tremendous anchor store. The bad news is that they are so dominant that the other airlines are reluctant to try and compete with them. And that's one of the challenges that we've had in attracting new service. Because the airlines can put that airplane, it flies equally well between any 2 cities. And so if they have to compete, they can put it wherever they can put the most profitability to their shareholders versus coming to an airport with such a dominant carrier. That said, they do a great job for us, and all of the airlines do a tremendous job for us, again, getting us to those 16 destinations which are outlined on the bottom of the slide. So here, just as an overview, as you might suspect, these are our most popular destinations, and that's because where most of our flights are going to. Major connections with Southwest Airlines into Baltimore, Philadelphia on U.S. Airways, Chicago on both Southwest and on United, and so on. Next slide, Tom. So here's some of the strengths. When we go, and Tom and I go out, we meet with each one of our airlines every year, if not a couple of times a year. And what the airlines are asking us is, don't tell us what we already know. We know where your customers are going because we sold them the tickets. We know where they live because we have the zip code of their credit card. Tell us what we don't already know. So one of the things that we can highlight to them is that we are centrally located, especially when we're talking to a new airline who may not be familiar with our region. We're centrally located in the heart of New England. As I indicated before, we serve and have great highway access to 4 different states. There's no congestion either getting into or out of the airport, both on the land side and more importantly to the airlines on the air side. You're never going to be number 22 in line for the foreseeable future at Manchester Washington Regional Airport. From a customer perspective, lots of convenient, inexpensive parking. And I was surprised to learn this, but over 5 million people live within an hour's drive. So that's a built-in market that these airlines can all look at and say, we can get in, we can get out, and we've got 5 million people that we can access. We also have, from an airline perspective and as well as a community perspective, very strong political support from the commissioner to the governor to the state legislatures to federal officials. I was just meeting with Kelly Ayotte and others on this whole sequestration issue just last week. Tremendous support from the FAA, the TSA, and Customs and Border Protection folks. One of our real strengths is our reliability. It's been 23 years since this airport has ever closed due to snow removal, due to any kind of weather conditions. 23 years. So what that means from the airline perspective is with our landing system, the Cat 3 approach that I talked about, tremendous, the best, what I would call the best crews in the industry, keeping the airfield open. They know that they can get in and they can get out, even in the worst of times in a northern tier airport. We also have tremendous facilities. 3rd largest cargo airport in New England. Boston, number 1, Hartford, number 2, and then us. 176 million pounds of air cargo. It's about 50-50 between Federal Express and UPS. But back in that economic impact slide that I talked about, the number of jobs, some of the largest employers at the airport are Federal Express and UPS. You think about all of the jobs of the delivery drivers and so on, a lot of economic impact from them. We also have tremendous safety and security, positive feedback from the FAA, our regulators and so on. We do a great job. We work very, very hard on customer service. If you've ever been in and seen our Granite State ambassadors, they are just tremendous. And those are all volunteers, by the way. They are enthusiastic, energetic, and they volunteer their time to help greet people and welcome them to our area. And we've been working very hard on being environmentally sensitive. We've heard about sodium issues. We're very concerned. We have runway de-icing agents, and we track all of that as well. Work very hard to make sure that we are environmentally responsible. We've also got some large solar panels on our garage that the FAA helped us out with a grant, and that should save us around $100,000 a year in energy costs. We're transitioning over to a lot of LED lights on all of our roadway systems, our parking lots, and so on. So we're doing our best to be using green initiatives. So there's two things that I wanted to point out here. Low cost. Low cost both to the airlines and low cost to the customers. So let's start with the customers first. From the DOT information that we have access to, the one-way average fare, believe it or not, Manchester is lower than Logan, lower than Providence, and lower than Portland, Maine. We have been very, very competitive. The airlines have been very competitive, and I think in large part driven by Southwest dominance here of keeping fares low. But from the airline perspective, we don't control their airfares. We don't control the kinds of aircraft that they fly. We don't control their schedule. We can provide them information, we can provide them data, but the only thing that we can control that helps encourage airlines to provide additional service is by keeping our costs low. So the way airlines measure one airport against another is something called the cost per enplaned passenger. You wrap up all of their landing fees, you wrap up all of their terminal rentals, and divide it by the number of passengers that they fly out. Those are in-plane passengers. And we are half, less than half of what it is at Logan, and much, much lower than what it is in Providence. So we work very, very hard to control our costs and work within our operating budget. So some of the challenges that we've had is obviously the economy. It's the economy, stupid, right? Everybody, the entire industry has suffered since 2008 when the economy went down, and it has just been stagnating since then, although we're starting to see signs of recovery. As I said, February numbers were actually 1.2% up. What the airlines learned is that their supply, meaning the number of seats available, exceeded the demand. They got hit with record high fuel costs. In 2008, fuel for the airlines was $147 a barrel. Their business model is $60 to $70 a barrel. And they had to figure out a way to try and work through that. And they also have tremendous labor costs. Labor and fuel are now the two highest cost centers for the airlines. And so when they said, how are we going to deal through all this? Best way that they needed to do, they figured out that they needed to recognize and better manage their load factors. Meaning, we want to fill up. How many times have you used to fly and you'd be sitting in a window seat or an aisle seat and keep your head down and hoping nobody would sit next to you? Guarantee you now that middle seat is going to be full. That's their plan that's coming together. Okay? Consolidate. I already talked about United and Continental. We got US Air and American on their way. We've had Delta and Northwest already take place. And even Southwest and AirTran are in the process of merging. So how do they do that? They downsize the aircraft. So some of the aircraft, we used to have 3 or 4 757s a day on United Airlines flying between here and Chicago. And now we've got regional jets. So they shrunk the size of the aircraft, raised the fares, fewer flights, less fuel burn, smaller aircraft, and it increased their profits. No? And I've already covered all this. These are all the mergers that have taken place. Next, please. So again, this is what they're doing, reducing the size of their fleet, increasing load factors, raising fares, transitioning into a la carte pricing. Everybody knows, right now you pay for the bags, except on Southwest. Oh, you'd like a seat to go with that? You'd like to sit in the aisle, that's $10 extra. You'd like an aisle, a window seat, that's $20 extra. A la carte pricing, that is all bottom line revenue. They've learned quickly that people are willing to pay. Southwest has a new system where even Southwest, who talks about no bag fees, they've just implemented a program where the day of the flight, if you want to board at the head of the line, $40. $40. They are selling those out. People are walking up there and saying, I don't want to be in the C group. I want to be up front, $40. And it's that impromptu sale is all a new revenue stream for the airlines. Can you back up 1 minute? Because this is an important one, and this has impacted us. Each flight meets the profitability standards or it's gone. Didn't used to be that way. The airlines used to bet on market share. At all costs, market share, market share, market share. Not anymore. If that flight doesn't make, Southwest, for example, their profitability standard is 15%. If they don't make 15% on every flight, it's gone. They will take that airplane and put it somewhere else where they can get it. And I will tell you, a couple of years ago at the Manchester Chamber, we had Gary Kelly, the CEO of Southwest Airlines, came up and spoke to about 300 folks. And he said clearly that we lost some of our service from Manchester because we were not meeting that standard. And so the important thing for us is to make sure that those flights are full, that we show the demand for the additional service that we believe that we need to help grow the economy. And when they do all of that, it equals profits, and that keeps the airlines healthy. Now, thank you. So some of the challenges. So used to be at Logan Airport, you could only get into what we call a legacy carrier, the United, the Continentals, and so on, American. There were no low-cost carriers at Logan Airport. And back in 1996, this new upstart called Southwest Airlines went to Providence. I worked in Providence 11 years before I came here to Manchester. Our numbers skyrocketed. In 1998, Southwest came here. Numbers skyrocketed. Doubled the passengers in about 2 years. Now the population of the state didn't change, or minimally. So there was something that was going on. And what was going on is that Boston Logan Airport was the 12th most delayed airport in the country. What was going on is it was legacy carriers that was more worried about market share than profitability. They were worried about getting the maximum price out of passengers that they possibly could. And because of that, people swarmed both to the south of Providence and to the north of Manchester because we had Southwest Airlines. Now all of that has changed. There is now a plethora of low-cost carriers, Southwest and AirTran, now is not only in Manchester, but they're now in Providence, and as I indicated, but they're now in Boston, Bradley, in Portland. JetBlue's in Boston, Bradley, Providence, Baltimore, and so on. You can read those yourself. A lot of low-fare, low-cost carrier competition exists now. Next slide. So one of the big things that we also had is the Big Dig. Remember the Big Dig? Nobody wanted to go into Boston because it was such a mess to get there. And then when you got there, you paid a high fare. One of the things that we are seeing now is that because of the low fare, Boston is recapturing some of that market. One of the things that was brought up here earlier is the Boston Express drives right by Manchester Airport and exports our passengers down to Logan Airport. So that's helping drive some of the low fare carriers into Logan as well. And one of the things that we have a new commissioner of DRED, Jeff Rose. I don't know if you've if you all know Jeff, but a tremendous guy, and I'm looking forward to working with him. One of the things that the state has is a tremendous budget for marketing and advertising, and you've all seen their new program, Live Free and ... Most of that is dedicated toward drive markets. Most of that money is spent in Massachusetts and New York and Pennsylvania, getting folks to get in their cars and drive up here, fill up the hotels at the ski resorts and at the lake. What we're going to try and do and talk with Commissioner Rose is talk about trying to expand that and again make Manchester, make New England, make New Hampshire more of a destination. And I want to try and use some of that money that they currently already have, so I'm not asking for any additional expenditure, just try to redirect some of it, because as I indicated at the very beginning, 61% of our economic impact of $1.24 billion comes from those people that don't live in this area. And for all of us that are in business that want to grow our businesses, it's advantageous to us to try and bring in additional folks. Next time. So what I'm calling near-term considerations is where do we go from here? We need to continue to maintain our low operating costs, obviously operate safely and securely. Tom and I always go out and aggressively market MHT to the airlines. As I said before, we meet with them every year at least once. We work with the network planning departments. If we see that there is service needed in a particular destination that we don't have, we try and build the case for that. Again, develop advertising and marketing campaigns. Again, creating that demand. We need to be able to make sure that we fill up the seats that we already have. When an airline puts a flight on the books, on the schedule, say it has 150 seats, and they know in 120 days out that half of those seats should be sold. And in 90 days out, 75% of those seats could be sold. And in 60 days out, 90% of those seats should be sold. If we can demonstrate that there is so much demand here that they sell out that airplane in the first 120 days, that is a signal to them that there's more need for additional capacity here. The more capacity that we have here, it builds up additional airline service, not only to existing routes, but potentially to new destinations. And then we always try to maximize our public relations opportunities. Next time. One of the challenges that we had when Southwest Airlines went into Logan Airport, JetBlue not only doubled down, they tripled down. JetBlue is the largest carrier at Boston Logan Airport. They were extraordinarily threatened when Southwest pulled some flights out of Manchester, pulled some flights out of Providence, and put them into Logan. And I will tell you that from a Southwest perspective, from their perspective, they didn't see that as reducing flights in Manchester, reducing flights in Providence. What they see is the Boston area, the Boston region. And so they just saw it as a redistribution of the capacity that they already had. What they found when they, again, I mentioned earlier about your zip code, when you buy your airline ticket, Southwest, found that inside the 128 Beltway, they were not capturing the passengers. They were all going to JetBlue at Logan. And from their perspective, they were conceding that market to their arch enemy, JetBlue. And that was not going to happen. So they pulled some of the capacity from the north, from the south, put it into Logan Airport. When I got here in January of 2008, JetBlue had 51 flights a day out of Logan Airport. They now have 109. As soon as Southwest went in, they announced that they were taking every new airplane that they received and they're putting it in Logan Airport. There is a market share battle going on down there. And they have committed to go by 2015 to 150 flights a day. Just to give you a perspective, we are about 50 flights a day out of Manchester. Logan Airport has about 470 flights a day. They're almost 10 times the size, 10 times the capacity. And as the additional capacity goes into Logan Airport, it makes the the supply and demand ratio we talked about before, it makes it even tougher for the airlines to continue to make any kind of profit out of there. When Southwest went in, they were so focused on their battle with JetBlue is that there was a price war going on, and they forgot about Manchester, and they forgot about Providence. And so I could open up my window at my office and hear this sucking sound going about down 93. It was everybody driving right by us down to Logan Airport because they could fly on Southwest Airlines, they could fly in the same airplane, going to the same destination for significantly less. We wrote to all of the airlines and asked for them to give us, in the industry, fair parity. And they have all significantly changed their pricing strategies. And at this point, as I indicated earlier, we actually have a lower average one-way fare than they do now out of Logan. So if you were of the mindset that it's always cheaper to fly out of Logan, I encourage you again to check Manchester before you leave. And we also want to build strong business relationships, and obviously that's why we're here, because it does enhance the economic impact. And additionally, these are our wonderful Grand Estate ambassadors. We have tremendous customer service. Next time. So we've got several successes that I want to talk about. One is our new redesigned website. We feel it has a lot more information to it. It also has a engine in there that will allow you to put in where you want to go, and it'll help you find the best airline to get you there. So I encourage you, if you haven't gone to flymanchester.com, that you take a look at that. Enhanced service. Southwest Airlines has recently made some upgrades. Again, demand required additional seats. Most of Southwest Airlines flights have 137 seats on their Boeing 737. They've now purchased new 737-800s that have 175 seats. So we may have the same number of flights that we used to, but we've now got more capacity, more seats, and that's because there was a demand. They brought back the ever-popular non-stop flight to Fort Lauderdale for the winter season. That started in November, and that'll end coming up here in mid-April. And coming soon in June is the new nonstop, or the return of the nonstop to Las Vegas. Very popular destination. That's Southwest Airlines used to have kind of like Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. If you had 30 flights a day, it was 30 flights a day year-round. Not anymore. Now what they do is they modify their schedules. We've had them bring in flights for 1 month and then pull it back up. Not because of anything we did or didn't do, or demand or didn't do. They just know that that's when the capacity demand is here, and that's how specific they are with their new schedules. Delta Airlines has been a tremendous partner. When U.S. Airways discontinued their service to JFK, Delta started out with 1 flight a day to New York with jet service versus the turboprops that U.S. Air used to have. We now have 4 jet service flights a day with a first-class product. That was one of the biggest complaints we had from medallion customers on Delta Airlines, is I would love to fly out of you, but I've got a million bazillion miles, and if I just show up at Logan, they put me up in first class. We didn't even have that first-class product. Now Delta is working toward giving us the first-class product on all 4 of our flights down to New York, but also bringing back a second MD-88 down to Atlanta, down to their major hub here. And we're working with them as soon as they can get additional regional jet aircraft, then they plan on bringing in first-class product out to Detroit as well. U.S. Airways has been another good partner with us. They just announced that they'll be bringing in additional flights to their hubs to Washington National and also to Charlotte. Real additional capacity for us. It's great. Third best year ever with cargo, 176 million pounds. And when I say it's the third best, it's only third best by 1 million pounds or 2. It's almost a record year, and we already are seeing, based on the information we're getting back from FedEx and UPS, looks like we're going to have an even better year this year. One of the things that we have to do, because we are an enterprise fund within the city of Manchester, is that we have to operate within the revenues that we generate. There's no city taxpayer dollars that are coming to the airport. We are an enterprise fund. We live within the revenues that we generate. So we have to be very careful about how we manage it. We just refinanced about $85 million worth of various bond issues and saved over $500,000 a year. And again, I talked earlier about our sustainability initiatives, not just because it's the right thing to do, it also in the long term saves us significant dollars. Tom? And this is good feedback to us. I always consider it pretty hokey. I feel like I'm reading some Reader's Digest thing. And it says Manchester, Boston Regional is the type of small airport that I love. Neil E., whoever Neil E. is. But the best one is the next one. It says, could I be in love with an airport because I think I am? And I don't know who Amelia B. is, but I know it's not Brewer, so it's not my sister. All right, so future plans and considerations. One of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that we continue to capitalize on what we already have and work with our existing carriers of adding that first-class product. We also want to implement our master plan. Back, if you recall, in 2005 was our record year. All the infrastructure that we have here now is significant. Over $500 million, $500 million worth of infrastructure has been put into the airport in the last 10 years. And that doesn't include the 175 airport access road that was built with state and federal money. So we want to make sure that all the infrastructure that we have now is well maintained, operates efficiently, and what we'll be doing, I think, over the course of time is you won't be seeing any new large expansions of the airport terminal building. What you'll see is the airport terminal building becoming more efficient. As the airline industry evolves, there's less demand for airline ticket counter space, more demand for new technology. We're putting in a new backbone of technology throughout the terminal building. So a lot of it will be behind the scenes, but just to give you some sense that we're keeping up with it and we're going to keep making the airport even more efficient. We've got a lot of new opportunities just to our south. The new airport access road here is coming in through about 700 to 1,000 acres in the town of Londonderry. This Pettingill Road, which will stub off of here, will open up that 1,000 acres. The challenges for the town of Londonderry to come up with the $12.8 to $13 million to build that road, and they're working through that now. But we see that as a huge economic engine, not only for Londonderry, but for the entire state. Built within that, this is the Raymond Resort Drive, the new airport access road. The airport has about 21 acres. We've done a study with a hotel consulting firm that believes that this is a perfect location for a hotel conference center facility adjacent to the airport, easy access in and out, and again, be able to attract those folks from afar, not just regional conferences, but bring in live folks in, use that hotel facility. So more to come on all of that. We're looking for enhancements not only for those folks from afar, but also locally. I know that this is a very difficult thing to see, but you've all been to the airport. The roundabout, just before you go under the bridge, it says welcome to Manchester Boston Regional Airport. Up to the right, you see the big white fuel tanks that say Jet A on it. We'd like to build a new gas station convenience store up in that area and relocate our cell phone lot up into that area. So the folks that are waiting for people to come in, we go ahead and get them, fill up their car with gas, go in and get that gallon of milk or whatever, so it makes it even more efficient for when you arrive back home, you're ready to go. We also have 22 additional properties. We just hired a commercial real estate broker to help market those and diversify our revenue stream. What we don't want to do is always be, in terms of an enterprise fund, keeping the airport operating in a healthy financial mechanism, be relying exclusively on the number of passengers coming through the front door. We want to diversify our revenue stream, and we want to absolutely grow the economy. So here's the messages we send, and this is my request of all of you, is that I know that there's been a perception out there that the airfares are cheaper out of Logan Airport. But I will tell you that when You use your credit card and the airlines know where you live. And if they know that they are attracting New Hampshire residents to fly out of Logan or out of Portland or out of Providence, there's less incentive for them to add service here. From their perspective, as long as you get on the airline, they don't much care which airport you fly out of. So our goal is to make sure that if you can take a 137-seat airplane and fill it up here, or a 137-seat airplane in Boston and fill it up there, again, our costs to the airlines are half of what it is in Logan. That all drops to their bottom line. But what the real issue is for them is create demand. We need to be able to demonstrate that the demand is here, they're going to fill up the airplanes, and they're more likely to add additional service, not only to our existing destinations, but to others. So with that, let's grow together, and I just want to thank everybody for being here this morning. And with Stacy, do I have 5 minutes for the video, or are we done? We're done. All right. I ran long. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's an exciting topic. I think everybody sits in their chairs listening to people speak about Southwest Air and the visions of being somewhere else in cold spring and winter days. So I'd just like to add a little story about keeping the business in. As part of the Government Connections Committee, we want to keep everything in southern New Hampshire to the extent to grow the region. And you know, flying out of Manchester is a painless experience. And I got a survey, I think maybe even from your own airport a few years ago, about my flying preferences, Logan or Manchester, and I'm thinking of clogged highways, and I told them, I said, well, I don't know if you have a checkbox for this, but put it down that I would probably rather walk to Chicago than fly out of Boston. So it's a great airport to get in and out of. So planes, trains, automobiles, we're up to the automobile component. Right now I'd like to introduce Chris Clement from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, the Commissioner, to talk about the automobile component of our highways, and he'll enlighten us. Thank you.
Good morning. I think what Mark was hitting on is the same thing with Senator Rausch. Was at the end of the day, we're all in the customer satisfaction business. Really, that's what I was taking in, and that all of us have to improve our value proposition to the customer, whether it's at the airport or whether it's us in transportation. In terms of working on all modes of transportation, we need to improve our value proposition in order to help move the economy along. Yes, sir. So the topics that I wanted to talk to you about this morning is that I was asked to give an update on I-93. Where are we on I-93? It's a project that started in the early 1980s, and we're now in 2013, and we're kind of like on the home run stretch here. So where are we at with that? Going through the phases, the cost. The cost is a big part of the project, of course, in terms of where the remaining funding is going to come from. I also want to give you an update what's going on with the infrastructure in New Hampshire. I think that if you only heard from me today as it related to just I-93, you'd leave the room without seeing the big picture. And then also, I was asked to just talk briefly upon what's going on with the New Hampshire Capital Corridor, the study that we're working on. Yes, sir. So looking at I-93, really the project was to widen the facility from the state line in Salem up to the split in Manchester, 293, 93. That's when the project started back in the 80s. Okay. In addition to that, we're gonna looking at modernizing the interchanges and the exits 1 through 5. Of course, there were 21 red list bridges on I-93 that have or will be replaced. We only have a couple left, which is great. And then the new parking lots, at exits 2, 3, and 5, and we'll go through that a little bit more as well. And then, of course, sound walls through various stages of the project. Boston Express. Mark spoke a little bit about Boston Express, and we'll go too deep into that. But really, at the end of the day, when you look at Boston Express and what it's done for I-93, it's been phenomenal. Right now, we have 26 round trips on the I-93 segment, and then 13 round trips on the FE Everett. And when you talk to the folks at the Federal Transit Administration, they'll tell you that Boston Express in New Hampshire, USA is the most successful New Starts program in the entire country. Okay? It's not in California, it's not in Dallas, Texas. It's in New Hampshire. Yes, sir. In terms of ridership, last year we hit the all-time high point. It was almost 550,000 passengers, and then the chart you see on the left shows that the subsidy that Boston Express services received has gone down over time. So with increased passengers, of course, the cost structure goes down. Back to I-93, right now, the total costs were around $800 million, okay? I was told a story sometime back when we started the I-93 project, the construction portion of I-93 for the 20 miles back in the early 80s, we were estimating between $40 and $50 million. And right now, we're at $585 million, and the project's not finished yet. So Senator Rausch said that there's one remaining piece left for I-93. It's the $250 million that's unfunded, okay, that will allow us to have the expansion with the capacity improvements, we call them, from exit 3 north to exit 5 and then up to the split. So this legislative session, there's a lot of discussion going on in terms of how are we going to get the remaining funds to finish I-93, okay? And again, the value proposition part. When you talk to businesses, or businesses talk to us saying, listen, we'd love to come to New Hampshire, but we're not going to sit on 93 in congestion and burn lots of fuel and lots of wasted time. So basically, if you build it, we will come. Looking at the different three different areas of projects, we had early action projects now which are really complete. Some of those were the park and ride lots. The mainline priorities, those are in process now. And then the capacity improvements, which is the ones that we're looking at for the future, those are bonded. Well, excuse me, those are the areas that we're looking at bonding now for the future. Yes, sir. Mainline priorities, real quick, going through these. Those are the projects that are included in our 10-year transportation plan. So New Hampshire's unique. We have a 10-year transportation plan where we vet which projects are going to be in that plan. Not all states have a 10-year transportation plan. In our transportation plan, we also allocate funds to those said projects, okay? Right now, the mainline priorities are part of the 10-year plan. The $250 million remaining, those projects are in the appendix of the 10-year plan as an approved project, but we don't have the funding yet. So looking down through, you can see where we're at. Basically, the expected completion date from exits 1 through 3 and 5 is 2016, and $354 million the cost for the 19 construction contracts that are going on now, and we have another 314 that are under contract or complete in these areas. Yes, sir. One more. Projects not currently funded, again, that's the $250 million. That makes up 6 construction contracts in total, 5 years to complete when we start moving forward. We just got the okay from the Governor and Council last month for the remaining engineering that's left for the entire project, so we're working on that now. And when we start on those final projects, it'll take approximately 5 years to complete. The thing that we have to be cognizant of when we're working on the I-93 project is that our permits lapse in 2020, okay? We want to make sure that all the construction work is done prior to 2020, so we don't have to go through those environmental permits again, so that's very important. And once we start that project, again, it's 5 years. It probably won't take that long to finish the project, but our goal is to be out of here on or before 2020. Yes, sir. Real quick on active construction, exit 5, that was a $37 million contract that went to Severino Trucking. That's going to be completed in 2014. Exit 3, the southbound bridges over Route 111 and 111A, $12 million project that went to E.D. Sweat Corporation. That's completed this year, which is a big deal. Exit 1, the main line area, $32 million, and that went to Middlesex. That's also going to be completed this year. Senator Rausch talked about the bonding capacity, and that's important because we, the Department of Transportation, had a bonding limit of $195 million, okay, for I-93. So when we went out in 2010, we got an $80 million bond, we call Garvey bond number 1. So those projects are really consuming that $80 million in bond number 1. The second bond, the $115 million bond, we went out to the market in 2012, okay? And the significance of that action is that we did not have a federal highway transportation bill that had been passed by Congress yet, okay? So we did not receive our federal bill, which is called MAP 21, Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century. We didn't get that bill until July of 2012, okay? But we went out in February, almost a year ago, 13 months ago, to the marketplace because the bonding rates at that time were so favorable. Number one, again, 1.26% for 7 years. I don't like taking out loans either, so even though we took out a bond, we were paying that off aggressively. 7 years, exit 2 and exit 3 would be paid off, okay? So we were betting the farm a little bit, going out to the market to bond because we didn't have federal funds as a backstop. We didn't know when the federal program was going to come in. We were confident that we were going to get a federal program because without transportation infrastructure, whether it's New Hampshire or the United States of America, we have big problems. So we were hedging our bet we were going to get it. Although the FAA, Mark, went through how many continuing resolutions? 23? 23. 23. So it was a little bit of risk there. I was betting my job. No kidding. But it came through. The story is it came through. We got a bond for 1.26% interest rate. The bid prices that we're getting from our contractors are still historic lows. In some cases, 20% below our DOT's engineer's estimate, which is great. Another time to invest, again, improving your value proposition. And then also in that process, we're saving the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars in interest charges because they're low. Yes, sir. And then the last part of the $115 million Garvey bond is for exit 3. We're not going to advertise that till this fall, and that'll be completed in 2016. Yes, sir. One other part here is on Route 111, we're moving, the future 111 is here, which is it's kind of hard to see. The existing 111 is here. We're moving the road, or the facility up here to give more access here. That's a big deal. And over here, which is also hard to see in this chart, we're relocating 111A, and that's giving access to about 30 acres of land in that stretch there, which is big for that area there. Tom, one more, please. So, although I-93 is very important, it's the state's most important project as deemed by the legislature, and we at the department and Senator Rausch has been great in terms of helping us determine a revenue source. There's also lots of other needs going on around the state that you should be aware of. New Hampshire, we have about 4,600 center lane miles of roads in our state, and they're broken up into 3 different areas, if you will. The National Highway System, which is really the least amount, which is about 18% of the roads, or 790 miles, which is turnpikes, interstates, and U.S. routes. The majority, which is about 61%, is the U.S. routes and state numbered routes. And then the last one is at roughly 1,000 miles of unnumbered state routes. And when I go out and I speak, is this last one here, number 3, is the one that we're touching less and less and less each year because we have less and less funding, okay? And the issue with that is it costs us on average about $51,000 per mile, $51,000 per mile to keep a good or fair road in good or fair condition. When that road completely goes down and we have to do a total reclamation on it, it's about $1.1 million. So it's better for us to keep up and maintain the system like you would on your house, otherwise it costs you exponentially more. Can you back up one more? Just an interesting point here. We have 4,600 center lane roads in New Hampshire. And if you map this out, okay, if you map this out from across the country from Concord, New Hampshire to Anchorage, Alaska, when we have a typical snowstorm, we plow, in essence, 4,600 center lane miles of roads back and forth to Anchorage, Alaska, 9 round trips. That first trip we do from Concord to Anchorage, Alaska, we do in 4 hours. So, yes, please. So this is what 4,600 center lane miles of roads looks like. This chart says right here, miles in good or fair condition, okay? And what we're saying here is back in the 1990s, really was when the last time that the highway fund saw a raise, if you will. The last time that the fuel tax was increased, we try to tie everything back to there. So even in the 90s, we were around 3,000 miles of roads that were in good or fair condition, okay? And as we went along through the 2000 period, 2008, we hit our all-time low where about 2,600 center lane miles were in good or fair condition. Then we had the stimulus funds come in back in 2010, and the state received $129.5 million of stimulus funds, and that year we paved about 700 miles. If not for stimulus, we would have continued trending down on that red line. What I like to say here is if all things remain the same from a funding perspective, we're going to continue to trend down on that red line. This green line here represents an investment of about $12 million more per year. So when I go out and speak, being very conservative, which we are as a state, right? Not being greedy, saying that we need about $12 million more per year to stay just okay. Okay, we need $12 million more a year just to stay here at 2,600 center lane miles of roads that are in good or fair condition. It's not the best, but it's okay. It's how we are in New Hampshire, just being pragmatic. Yes, sir. What this chart says is if you see that horizontal blue line across, that's 500 miles. Our goal in the department is to pave 500 miles of roads every year, so every 10 years we have fresh roads. Again, back in 1992, we were doing okay in the 90s, and then it dropped off, okay? And the first bullet that you see up there with a circle around it, that was the stimulus funds, okay? Again, the $129.5 million. And then the second one, where we almost paved 500 miles that year, was because we had a registration surcharge that you probably remember, and then that was sunsetted. That registration surcharge that we all had, it was $30 more per vehicle that we were all paying. That brought in about $45 million per year into the highway fund. And that was sunsetted in the last biennium. Yes, sir. What this chart says is here again, since 1992, liquid asphalt cement has gone up 460%. Pavement, right? Pavement has gone up 460% since 1992. Our cost of salt has gone up, road salt has gone up 127% since the year 2000. Diesel, gasoline, all of our equipment, all of that stuff has continued to go up in price, but yet the highway fund, New Hampshire Highway Fund, has stayed at the same level since 1992. So when you hear all the discussion going on right now in the legislature, whether it's going to be a gaming bill to fund transportation, or whether it's going to be this gas tax bill to fund transportation, these are all the discussions going on because the highway fund desperately needs additional revenue. So back in July, August, when we started to have these discussions all around the state, I asked our materials research people, there's a few metrics that I wanted to know. From a pavement perspective and from a bridge perspective. So when we're looking at pavement, what percentage of our roads were in good or fair condition, okay? And then how much would it cost if we had a blank check today to bring all those poor roads up to good condition? And here's the information that we have. Right now, 19% of our roads are in good condition. It's about 828 miles. And by the way, this isn't based on what New Hampshire DOT says or what Chris Clement says so we can stack the deck in our odds, okay? This is based on national standards. So 50 of my peers from around the country, we all measure these things the same way from a consistency perspective. 44% of our roads are in fair condition, which is about 1,800 miles. 37% are in poor, which is about 1,500 miles. $615 million is what's required today, net present value today, to take all the poor pavement condition roads and bring them up to good. Okay, $615 million. Also, I asked our guys, what's the value of the asset that you own? Our asset that we own, the state's road system, is about $3.7 billion. We're investing less than 1.5% into that $3.7 billion asset every year, okay? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And pavements, other than bridges, is the state's most valuable asset. Yes, sir. So this is that chart I was talking about. This is what 4,600 center lane miles of roads look like. And again, during a given snowstorm, we plow from A to B 9 round trips. Again, it takes 4 hours to go from A to B. And by another metric, 24-hour storm today is about $1.4 to $1.6 million total cost. It's with all of our hired trucks, so on and so forth, and about 460,000 of that is in road salt. And we're continuing to bring those road salt numbers down every year by using best management practices and using technology, okay? Because you only buy technology once, and you continue to be inefficient if you don't use technology, okay? And this is graphically what it looks like when you have poor, fair, or good condition mile roads. The red is all poor roads, so it'd be potholes, so on and so forth from Concord. You'd be riding on pothole roads from Concord to Fargo, North Dakota, and then North Dakota to Lake Watson, Yukon. It would be fair condition roads, and then the remaining green is what we have for good condition roads, which is about 800 miles. Yes, sir. This map here is pavement conditions. We also have placards here as well, and I know it's hard to see, but if you focus on the chart on the left, in the year 2000, there's less red, okay? Red is bad. So when you look at the chart to the right, you can see there's a lot more red. So it shows our pavement conditions 10 years later, how they've deteriorated. And again, that goes to the statistics in the prior slide. Basically what we're saying now in terms of pavement preservation, we're just trying to keep the good roads good because, again, when they fall into total disrepair, the cost is exponentially much more to bring them back. Yes, sir. Bridges, now we're going to talk about what it means to be a red list bridge, where you have one or more major element that is rated in poor or structurally deficient. In the state right now, we have about 140 red list bridges. Near red list bridges, that's where one or more structural element is rated in fair condition. And then green is good in terms of where we are now. In 2012, the state, we had 145 red list bridges, okay? And these it's maybe hard for you to see, but these red graphs here say what's going to happen, again, if all things remain the same. And what we're projecting based on our calculations is by the year 2014, again, all things stay the same from a funding perspective, we're going to have about 162 red list bridges, and by 2016 we're going to be at 173 red list bridges. In the state, from a state perspective, we have about 2,150 bridges in total. Like pavements, what this chart says is that with pavements we said we needed an additional $12 million more per year just to stay okay, to keep us on the okay path for pavement. The same thing for bridges. Again, we're saying we need $15 million more per year from a conservative approach just to start to ratchet down the number of red list bridges that we have in the state. Yes, sir. Similar graph as the pavements. The chart on the left is the 140 state red list bridges. So wherever you see all these little red dots, that denotes where a red list bridge is in. Could be some in your town. The chart on the right is the one that concerns me the most, because it's municipalities. Okay, we have 353 municipal red list bridges, and it's what we call the measles chart. You can see there's a lot more red on the chart on the right. Okay, since 1994, we have a program called the State Aid Bridge Program. It's about $6.8 million a year, and it's been $6.8 million a year since 1994. It's clearly not enough. And today, if a municipality closes a bridge and they call DOT, say we need help, we want to replace our red list bridge, we say okay, we'll absolutely put you in the queue, but the dwell time or the waiting time now is out to 2023. Okay, that's one of those issues that we're working through this legislative session to get solved. That program should be doubled. Okay, it should be doubled. What this says here is in last year, 11 municipal bridges were closed. So we, DOT, go out to the municipalities, we look at the bridges, we scan them over, and then we give a report to the municipality, and we give recommendations. And these 11 municipalities, we recommended to them when we did the bridge check that those bridges be closed for various reasons, okay? So last year, again, 11 municipal bridges were closed. In the same day, Francistown closed 2 of their bridges. And I saw a write-up in one of the papers last weekend about Francistown talking about what a negative impact this is for their town. So it's a big deal, yes sir. Similar to pavements, what would it cost to rehab or replace all the state's red list bridges? It's about $680 million, okay, to go out to repair or replace the 140 red list bridges that we have. Right now, we replace or repair about 10 bridges per year, okay, we the state. And as soon as we're getting those 10 bridges repaired or replaced, there's not 15 more bad ones that are coming on the list. So we're about 5 bridges per year in the wrong direction, not keeping up with what's going on. Again, what's the value of that asset? So our pavements were about $4 billion. The bridges are about $8 billion. So total, just between the state bridges and the pavements, we're looking at about $12 billion of asset value. Sir. I think Mark talked about, one of the things I heard Mark talk about was in 2005, that was the peak for the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport. Ties right to this slide perfectly. Last time we saw a surplus in the highway fund was 2005, okay? Ever since then, the New Hampshire Highway Fund has been going down from a revenue perspective, and this chart says that. Last time we had a surplus was fiscal year 06-07. We had to go out and bond operating costs in fiscal year 08. The legislature at the last minute, because we had an operational deficit at DOT, went out and bonded $60 million. You typically do not bond operating expenses. You only bond capital. But this is what the state did to plug that operational deficit. Again, in fiscal year 10 and 11, we had the registration surcharge that was $45 million a year, or $90 million in the biennium. In New Hampshire, we have a biennial budget. And then in fiscal year 12, we sold the high-level bridge in Portsmouth from the New Hampshire Highway Fund to the Turnpike Fund. So Turnpikes, which is a dedicated fund, it's an enterprise fund like Mark's Airport. Turnpikes is an enterprise fund, standalone entity. It paid the Highway Fund $120 million, and we've been feeding off that $120 million since then. We only have 1 year left. By the way, we have an operational deficit of about $25 to $27 million. We have 1 year left of revenue from that bridge to plug that operational deficit in the Highway Fund. Otherwise, we're going to be in a not a good situation. So we've been having those very tough, strong discussions with the legislature. I think they understand what's going on. Yes, sir. Real quick on the New Hampshire Capital Corridor, basically the long story short is that the Executive Council passed the study. There was a study that we had brought forward in 2011. At that time, the Executive Council decided that they were not prepared to move forward on that study. Okay? In comes a new governor, new Executive Council members, and they asked us to bring that study forward, which we did. And that was voted on in February, and the Executive Council passed it. So it's basically a $3.6 million contract with URS Corporation, and they're studying the corridor from Boston to Manchester, looking at capital costs, what it would cost for train sets, what it would cost to bring the rail up to current codes, also maintenance costs and operational costs. Okay? And then that's going to take about 18 months to complete. And the area that they're looking at studying is really from Concord, from Boston south to Concord north, and every part in between. There'll also be alternatives analysis that looks at whether it's passenger rail or if it's transit bus or there's a combination of both, so on and so forth, and what the impact would be for the airport as well, which is huge. Okay. Okay, that's everything I had. We got to answer questions now, or
yeah. Mark, if you'd like to come up and you can share a microphone, and what we'll do now is about 5 minutes of Q&A. Just raise your hands and they can share a microphone, and then I'll cut you guys off when we start running too late, so if you get involved with questions, but go ahead.
I have questions for both of you gentlemen. Mark, there were two casino initiatives that were unveiled yesterday. One for Everett, Mass, which will be accessible to Logan by water taxi, and Suffolk Downs, which already is accessible by subway. They'll capture the international market and the Boston market. What do you need? What resources do you need to become an international airport? I foresee that that's your next. Would that be your next market that you would want to tap?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think becoming an international, first of all, we already have customs and border protection, so we can receive international flights as we speak. Our problem is the infrastructure that we had. Our CBP facilities, FIS facilities, are only designed to handle equivalent to 30 to 50 passengers an hour. If we're truly going to be an international carrier, we need a much expanded FIS facility, international airport. We need an expanded FIS facility. Second thing that we're going to need is the capital corridor. We'll need rail. Tom and I actually went over to Europe a couple of years ago, and we met with the president of an airline, and the very first question out of his mouth was not, what's your runway length, what are your rates and charges? First question is, do you have rail? I will tell you that what their model that they're looking at is to avoid going into congested airports, avoid going into Logan Airport in our particular area of the region. In Providence, they already have an expanded FIS facility that can accommodate 200 to 400 passengers an hour, and they now have rail. We need to expand our facilities to accommodate it, which is about a $7 million project, and we don't have rail. We've got an 18-month wait to see if rail is even a possibility. That said, one 767 flight per day is a $100 million economic impact to this region. We had a study done a couple of years ago. 37 million of it is from the actual passengers, and 63 million is actually from the cargo that would be transported backwards. So from a dredge perspective, exporting and importing is huge economic impact. So a casino, when I was in Providence for 11 years, we had constant charters coming in, going over to Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. So it is an economic engine that I've seen it from an airport perspective. The international question is going to be a little bit harder to address, not only infrastructure-wise, but with the cost of fuel, demonstrating to an airline that we have that New Hampshire is a destination, and B, that we have the draw from the local community. Everybody wants to go on an international flight. If I asked everybody here, where would you like to go? Somebody would say Dublin, somebody would say London, somebody would say I'd like to go to Paris. Well, how often would you like to go? Well, I'd go every year for vacation. If we were flying a 250-seat airplane, we need to fill it up every day. And so we've got 5 million people within a 1-hour drive. So how do you get that airplane full every day? And what would be the competitive response to the airlines that are down at Logan Airport? If we have a low-fare carrier, do they meet or beat or put in a price war until our carrier goes out of business? Or what will be the competitive response? All of those things need to be flushed out, and I think rail is going to be a big component of that.
Mark, Chris, in the event so much is being put on the passage of the casino bill to generate funds to complete 93, what happens if that doesn't happen? What does that do to the completion of 93? And based on what Mark just said about the need for rail, the Manchester-Lawrence corridor also connects the airport from another geographic area, and also has the casino on that corridor. Should consideration be given to restoring service on that corridor, along with the bikes, being able to ride one's bike, and so?
Okay. So the first question is what happens in this session if we do not have a funding source for the remaining $250 million for I-93? That means that we keep going along with the projects that are funded now. That was the $80 million for Garvey Bond number 1, $150 million for Garvey Bond number 2, and once those projects are finished in 14, 15, if we don't have a revenue source, then the project stops. We've got big piles of dirt sitting there waiting to finish the remaining, the remaining piece from exits 3 north to exit 5 and then to the 293 split. That's basically what happens, and until the funding source comes after that.
As far as restoring the rail?
The St. Lawrence, the St. Lawrence part?
Manchester and Lawrence.
Well, I think right now we're taking one step at a time. I think the capital corridor, getting that study passed and through was a monumental effort. There was a lot of time and effort put into that, and just getting that over the line to get approved and us starting on that process was a big deal. I guess let's wait and see. Let's see what the results are from the New Hampshire Capital Corridor. Of course, we know it would be an impact for the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport to have rail there. We understand it. Anywhere that I traveled, around the world for 20 years prior to coming to state government, you get off a plane, and anywhere in Europe or Asia, there's transit and there's light rail there. Okay, it's different in New Hampshire. We think a little bit differently, and that's who we are. And so I think we just have to have the step. And again, value proposition, right? If we can show that the return on investment is there to our policymakers and legislators, then, and the residents, by the way, where the tax dollars are going to go, there's return on investment. Those discussions are a lot easier than saying that you're going to build a facility, you don't have the operational cost to pay for it, right? And that's where we start to have those difficult discussions. It's not the capital. The feds will build the capital. We need to operate it. We need to have operating funds.
Thank you.
Long answer, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, as a user of the Logan Express, I think it has a bad name, and we've talked about things that are have much greater impact, but since we have the Logan Express operating right now, there's a couple of questions I'd like to know if we can tweak it so that it serves Manchester better. Why is it called Logan Express? Well, I'm
Boston Express, actually.
Boston
Express.
Okay, and I do use it to go to Boston, not to Logan. I'd never want to go to Logan again. I would like to know, does that Boston Express serve Manchester? I always get in a car because we live so close. But what about the people who don't? Does it drop people off in Manchester?
It does not. Boston Express does not serve Manchester. There's about 11% of the passengers per year that go into Boston. Some of them go to Boston Regional Airport, some of them work in Boston. Okay, so there's not just by the way, those are full fare customers that are going into Boston. They're subsidizing the folks that aren't paying the full fare. So those customers that are going into Boston, whether they're going to Logan, and they're flying out of Logan for all the reasons Mark mentioned, okay, because there's multiple air carriers there. They may be flying international. They have a carrier that they have lots of miles on that they want to be able to get those miles for. So there's a very small percentage of folks that are riding Boston Express going into Boston every day. So we got to keep that in context. That sometimes gets taken out of context a little bit. Right, my friend Mark?
Well, I'd like to.
Thank you. Is your name Amelia B?
I would like to send you guys to Washington, D.C. and turn that enterprise into an enterprise.
Sure. Thanks. So one last point. So we are working on an east-west bus service that's going to go directly to Manchester. That's from the Seacoast to Manchester Airport. That's something that we started a few years ago. Actually, it was my first project as Deputy Commissioner of DOT, started working on that project. Sometimes these things take a little time. So check. That'll be going this July. We're also looking at now a service that goes back and forth between Concord, State Capitol, and Manchester Airport as well to act as a feeder. We were requested for a meeting maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. We've had 4 meetings since then. We're trying to fast track this along. We have to use what we call turnpike toll credits as our match because we have no hard cash match anymore in the state. I can talk to you for 2 hours about turnpike toll credits, which I won't. But it all comes down at the end of the day to funding and choices. A lot of this stuff is all about choices. Thank you.
Now, one last question, and then we'll probably wrap
Can
up.
I just?
I'm sorry.
I would like to address that in terms of the Boston Express and what the impact is. As Chris mentioned, it's 11% of the passengers are actually continuing on over to Logan Airport. But that number is 50,000 passengers a year. If you take 50,000 passengers and divide it by 365, that's 137. That's a fully loaded Boeing 737 each and every day, year-round, that are being exported out of the state. All I'm saying, and the last slide I had up here was demonstrate demand. I guess the part that is a challenge for us is that Boston Express, as important as it is of getting commuters off the road, and the state is doing what it needs to do to help get 993 funding the highest priority capital project in the state. I get it, totally understand it. But the Boston Express is not paying for itself. It's the buses were bought by the state, the park and rides were paid for by the state, it's being subsidized $1.7 million by the state, and the economic impact of the loss of 50,000 passengers to the airport is significant. And I think just from, we have competing interests in this issue. I do appreciate the state's strong support of the airport, building the airport access road. You can't minimize that. And also their willingness to help support bus service at a smaller scale from Portsmouth to Epping over to the airport. So we have a great partnership. We just happen to have different perspectives on the Boston Express and how it operates.
My question's for Mark. I'm part of that sucking center. I live right here, and I fly with my family in JetBlue. I have young children, and frankly, the TVs are a big advocate for me. We just fly JetBlue. And I'll be straightforward. I find your argument about, I think New Hampshire is the best thing since sliced bread, and I make a living advocating for this state, primarily over the one that is directly south of us. And I find your argument to be very curious and straightforwardly, remarkably ineffective, that you would like me to make a decision that to help you as a data point, fly out of Manchester, even though what is best for my family is to fly out of Logan out of JetBlue. So for someone that's a huge advocate of New Hampshire, that's an easy thing. The answer is no. I'm going to do what's best for my family, not to have a data point from Manchester Airport as to maybe down in the future you can get flights in JetBlue. So my question is this. If it's true that people inside 128 don't want to fly to Manchester, the converse is true. I'd rather fly out of Manchester if JetBlue was in Manchester. And I'm assuming you've gone to JetBlue and you've made those metric points about costs and all that.
Right.
And you have such idiosyncratic risk at Manchester with Southwest. It's 3 out of 5 passenger flights are there. There's great incentive for you to want JetBlue up there to compete. You provided them the metrics, and they've made a decision that they aren't locating there. And I guess what can you, as an airport authority, do to get JetBlue to go to Manchester? And I'll fly out of Manchester.
Excellent.
But until they do, the argument that I should become a data point for Manchester Airport, to me, is straightforward, remarkably ineffective.
Okay, I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the question. So it's not a data point for the Manchester Airport. I'm looking at it as operating a facility that is an economic engine for the state. As again, demand is what drives capacity. Demand is what drives the airlines to want to add service. JetBlue, we have talked to them. They have come up. We've had Dave Barger, who's the president CEO, in our boardroom, in our conference room, met with the mayor, met with 2 mayors, met with Mayor Ginta back then. They've told us it is not a matter of if, it's when. They have come through the terminal building, they have picked up their ticket counter, they know what gate they want to operate from, it's a matter of when. They told us what their strategy for New England, because don't forget they're a national airline, and they're going to put that infrastructure where they think they can make the most profit. They're in Logan in a big way, the largest carrier at Logan Airport. After Logan, they went into Hartford. They wanted to try Hartford for a couple of years, and then they went into Providence. Providence is a 30% larger market than us. They're in Providence. They started there November 29th. If Providence is successful, then they will work their way here. So again, it's not if, it's when. The data point that we're looking for is to be able to demonstrate the demand. That's why we have a difference of opinion on the Boston Express, because that's a full airplane every day. And what would be the economic impact to the state, to your business, to other businesses if we had that additional capacity? That's my goal. We're not going to be all things to all people. There are going to be times when there are airlines, you saw my list up there, Sun Country, Virgin America, and all those, JetBlue, who do not operate from Manchester, Boston, Regional Airport. They could have a sale, they could have a better service, they could go to a destination that you don't want to stop, you don't want to change airplanes, you want to go nonstop. Again, people will fly out of Logan Airport for their reasons and what's right for you and what's right for your family. I've heard it many, many times. If it was as simple as just picking up the phone and saying, JetBlue, we would love to have you here, check that box, because it's been done many times. It's working through the economics with not only JetBlue, but with Allegiant and with Sun Country and with a number of other airlines that we're talking to as well. But unless we could show that we could fill those airplanes up and make them a profit, then they're not going to come. Good.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Chris. I'd like to start wrapping up now, and want to thank everybody for coming out to this event today. Very well attended. I hope everybody leaves here a little smarter than when they came in. And from a couple of things we just want to throw out from the London Dairy Chamber events upcoming. We have a, and again, I'd like to thank the directors of the Chamber, Stacy Brusesi and Donna Morris from the Greater Salem Chamber for putting this together. We have the London Dairy Chamber, speaking for them, we have an upcoming event, April 26th, it's a State of the Region event with Governor Hassan. That should be interesting. It Promises to Keep in Derry. So we'd like to see some people attend that. Donna, would you like to throw out anything for upcoming for you?
Yes, thank you, Bernie. The Greater Salem Chamber will also have Governor Hassan at our annual Economic Development Breakfast, which is Thursday morning, April 18th at Castleton Events Center. And we'll also have an update from the Department of Resource and Economic Development, as well as our second annual Business Pillar Awards, which recognize outstanding businesses in the community.
Thanks, Donna. And finally, I'd like to add that Mark is going to stay around a little bit and show the 5-minute video that we had to kind of take away from him on his last presentation. And I know it's a good video, and I would encourage everybody to stick around and watch that, and he'll be willing to show that to you. So I'd like to adjourn this today, and I thank everybody for coming out.